If you're someone who really struggles with your marketing and you really want your business to grow and do that sustainably, then you're in absolutely the right place. Because today I'm talking to Sophie Comas and she's going to be giving some brilliant tips on how you can sustainably grow your business. So, Sophie, welcome. I'm going to hand straight over to you if that's okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much for talking to me today, Julie. It's really nice to be able to talk to you a little bit more about marketing and really share some kind of approaches and things to help people get started. So, just very briefly, my name is Sophie Comas. I'm a freelance marketing consultant or fractional marketing director, and I set up Mimi Marketing in 2014. So we celebrate our 12th business birthday this month. And we work with ambitious small businesses to help them to grow and flourish. And we do that by working right the way across the marketing mix. So that will start to make a little bit more sense as we go through the conversation that we're going to have today. So before I get into kind of the detail and the nitty gritty of things, I first of all just want to set the landscape a little bit. So first of all, by thinking, why is marketing important? Why do we need it? What does it do? And what does it help us achieve within our business? So the first thing is it helps us to drive visibility of our brand. So it helps us to achieve standout versus our competitors. It helps us to nurture existing client relationships. So lots of people talk about acquiring new customers, whereas actually there's also kind of a little bit of work to be done in nurturing existing relationships and continuing a conversation with existing clients and people that we work with. And then there's also an element which is perhaps becoming a bit stronger, especially with the rise of AI. And that's showing a little bit of thought leadership. That's showing a little bit about the person behind the brand and their expertise in what they do. So there's lots of thought that goes into helping us create our marketing activity that help us achieve and realize those ambitions. The first thing we need to think about is our integrated marketing activity. So whereas I see sometimes small business owners might talk about one thing in social media and something else in email marketing and then have a separate blog topic, for example, actually what we need to do is to pull all of those channels together to create a consistent approach to our marketing. So if we have a blog title, and actually one of the tips I'll come on to talk about later is how we might repurpose things, how we might kind of take some of the, all of the good work that we've put into writing a blog article and then apply that via different channels. But the reason why that's really important is that it helps us to achieve cut through. So we need to consistently engage with our audience. I talk a lot with my clients about it's not enough to perhaps do a whole ton of stuff, maybe over 3 or 4 weeks and then nothing for 3 or 4 months. Actually, that drip, drip, drip effect is where we see marketing really become very successful and start to have the impact over time that we want it to achieve. One of the things I do also encourage my clients to think about is that balance, though, between what works for a small business owner. So when you're really busy, what do you realistically have an opportunity to deliver? And from the customer perspective as well, how frequent do they want to hear from you and your business? And that will vary by different businesses and different sectors. So consistency is key. Then we need to create a streamlined content strategy that helps us apply that those kind of consistent messages across all of our different channels, and then focus on the channels as to where your audience hang out. So social media is often a great example of this, where people want to engage with 4 or 5 channels, whereas actually that's a massive undertaking. If your audience is in LinkedIn, if you're a professional organization and your audience is there, focus on LinkedIn. Don't worry about Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and Snapchat and all of the other social media channels that kind of pop up and start to come through. So think about that as a really, really key start point. So the way in which we work at Mimi Marketing is we've created what we call an ideas framework. And that's a 4-step process. So we start by identifying and understanding our business. And I'll come on to explain a bit more about that in a moment. We then design a clear marketing strategy, which is essentially our roadmap as to how we're going to move forward, what activity we're going to do and when, and where are we going to focus our energies. We then move to the execution role and the implementation phase, and that's where we start to refine our messaging. We start to create content, and Canva is a great tool for small business owners to use in doing that. And then assess and analyse everything that we're doing. And that's often a step which is most commonly forgotten by many marketeers, yet alone small business owners. It's really important we put metrics and tracking elements in place so that we understand if something is working or not working. So where I'd like to start before we kind of get into the detail of perhaps how we might drive visibility of our brand is just by sharing a couple of very basic principles. And that starts with any marketing activity, the beginning of anything that we're trying to do. We need to define our SMART business objectives. That will often take the lead from a business plan if we have one, or if not, it is the foundation really of our marketing strategy. So generally, I would see that we have about 5 or 6 SMART objectives. They need to be specific, measured, achievable, relevant, and timed, which is the SMART acronym. Don't know why I always need to use my fingers to do that, but it's one of those things. It's also useful when we're thinking about what we're trying to achieve. It's also looking at what our competitors are doing. So thinking about, they may have a new product or service which might influence what you're doing. But I'm always really keen for the clients that we work with to set your own path and your own strategy and your own direction. It's good to be aware of what's happening in the industry or what's happening with competitors, but setting your path and setting the route of the objectives that you want to achieve is really important. Research might also come into play at the beginning of when we're defining our strategy, just to either check in with our target audience, and I'll come on to talk a bit more about that in just a moment, or to identify any new opportunities. If we want to diversify or expand our proposition, we might find that actually there's some value in going out to an audience and just sense checking something before we invest lots of time and energy in launching something. The next thing that I want to start with, so once we've got our SMART objectives, we then need to think about who our target audience is. So we want to think about, what's their demographic? What problems do we solve for them as an organisation? What are their dreams and aspirations? So how do we help them by what we do or what we deliver within our organisation? And then think about whatever else you know about them. So whilst a lot of content might be very focused on what you do as an organisation or sharing wisdom or experience or insight or showcasing knowledge, actually sometimes we can connect with people on a more personal level. And as we see the rise of AI, that's becoming even more important. People want to see the individual behind a brand and they want to understand them as a person. So, for example, we have Windsor Horse Show coming up in the next couple of weeks. I love horses. I always have done from a very early age. And that might be something that I might connect with my audience on. Same with dogs. I have an English Springer, so that might also be a way of connecting with other like-minded people. But it's really important to think about your audience and to think about what their interests are. That might also generate opportunities of ways in which you can connect with them. So once we've got clarity on those two things, we then need to think about getting our marketing foundations into place. So what I mean by that is making sure the website has a clear customer journey. We make sure that we're regularly writing blogs to showcase our expertise and also to answer questions that our audience might have and might want to ask of us. We're then taking that content and sharing it via our social media channels and our email marketing channel. I'm a massive fan, and if anybody follows me or engages with me, they'll know that I really think email marketing is one of those core foundations that underpins not just client acquisition, but also the nurture sequence of maintaining that relationship with our existing clients. So once we've got those things all working together and working well, we can then look at ways in which we can raise our visibility. So that might include things like featuring on podcasts and radio. It might include local media advertising. It might include networking or running our own webinars. It might include sponsorship, or if there's a little bit of budget available, things like Google AdWords or Facebook and Instagram advertising. Again, thinking about your business will guide which media channel is right way for you to connect with your audience, and also what you want to get out of it, because different media have different objectives. So things like local media advertising will be more awareness driving. You're less likely to have maybe 100 inquiries as a result of a feature in a magazine or an editorial versus if you take or use other different media types. Partnerships is also another really good way of raising our visibility. So we might look at complementary organisations. So, for example, if you're an accountant and a bookkeeper, or an HR consultant and a careers coach, they might have quite nice complementary services where you can just broaden your horizon and increase the visibility and reach of your organisation. So we've covered in a massively whistle-stop tour, Julie. I'm conscious I've talked very, very quickly, but I think the other thing, just to kind of wrap up with on a couple of other things, is to think about the content that you share, and creating mini campaigns. So what I mean by that is, with a lot of clients I work with, we might look at having different topics that we focus on different months, depending upon the seasonality of your business. Or it might be that, if you're a services-based business like myself, for example, actually just having different focuses on different parts of the marketing mix might work. Or if you are a visitor attraction, for example, you might be more focused around school holidays, and you might flex your messaging around those particular campaigns and timeframes. You want to think about having a consistent tone of voice and a consistent visual delivery. So if you've got all of your brand guidelines, you want to make sure that any of your visuals look like they're from the same stable. If you think about Nike or Apple or some of the big brands, they're immediately visually identifiable and recognizable as those brands, rather than perhaps changing lots of colors or fonts or something like that. Storytelling is also a really good way to engage with people, especially in mediums like social media. And obviously the use of video is also really important. It comes back to that element of being authentic and people wanting to engage with us as individuals and understanding the people behind the brands. So I say, when thinking about being creative, less is definitely more. Be visual. That will help us to achieve cut through. Be single-minded in your messaging. Don't forget to include a call to action. I did some years back do a little bit of work with a client, and they came to me in our initial conversations and said, I've done this leaflet, I'm really happy with it, but I don't know why nobody contacted me off the back of it. We turned it over. There was no website, no telephone number, no email, no anything. So that was a learning for them.
Expensive learning, I imagine.
Yes, it was. So yes, the call to action is important. And as with all marketing, we need to continue to test and learn. So going back to our ideas framework at the beginning of the conversation, always putting metrics into your campaigns as to what success looks like. So what kind of reach do you want with your social media activity? What open rates are you aspiring to with your email? What kind of visitor numbers do you want to see coming to your website? And then obviously the most obvious one is bookings and inquiries that come off that, and sales off the back of that as well. But that we're really lucky in today's digital age that there's lots of different ways we can track success. Within that, we've also got general feedback and also client reviews as well, which also act as very good social proof when we're looking to talk about our businesses in various different channels as well. So a whistle-stop tour. Happy to answer any questions that you have, but I wanted just to finish up with some time-saving marketing habits to get into, because I know that's very much the core focus for yourself and your audience. Consistency is key, both visually, messaging, and frequency-wise. So trying to get templates set up, get your brand guidelines in place makes that a lot easier. Create many integrated campaigns so that you can kind of vary that depending upon the seasonality of your business. It helps if you write a blog and then repurpose that content. That is a time-saving process as well. So that can be a useful tip and trick too. Bulk prepare, so work a month ahead. Think about your content for the next month so you can come up with your social media framework, create all of your assets and your content, think about your hashtags and your links as part of that process. That makes that a lot easier. Use scheduling tools, so whether that's in the Meta universe out to Facebook and Instagram, or whether that's via tools like Hootsuite or Social Pilot's the one I use. There's lots of different ones out there. And AI, obviously, I would be remiss of me not to touch on AI before we finish. Think about how you use that tool very carefully. It's great for idea generation, it's great for polishing, but the middle bit where the individual is guiding the strategy, creating the framework and the direction of how you want to use the tool is still really, really important. But using that as well to try and polish and refine your content, but please make sure it's personalized. Please take out all of the AI giveaway tells, but otherwise it can be an amazing tool to really help elevate our marketing activity.
Oh my, well, what are the AI giveaway?
So US spellings, so specialize, analyze with Z's instead of S's, long dashes. We don't tend to use long dashes. And if you do, it's a smaller dash, although with the rise of AI, it's probably better to remove them completely. Using commas before and. So that is something that in some grammatical sentences can be used, but actually AI puts them in everywhere, and that's a really obvious tell. And the last one is also using words like actually right now in all of your copy. That's pretty much a giveaway because we don't tend to speak that way. Certainly with British English, it might be different in American English, but I don't think I've ever in conversation said, you've actually got to do this, Julie, right now, because it's going to make it work for you. So yeah, so just
Wow.
some giveaway tells.
Wow. Well, I'm so glad I asked that question. I've actually got three more. So, and I don't want to forget what they were. So one's about cut through, what that means. The other is blogs, how often, minimum, how often, newsletter, what's most effective, the frequency.
Yeah. Okay. So cut through, I mean, achieving standout. So we've got so many messages that we're bombarded with in the digital space that to create cut through, what I mean by that is standout. So we know that from the know like trust model that we need to touch people between about 5 to 7 times, and actually there's some debate around that number is probably increasing, that we need to touch people that many times in frequency. So that could be seeing a social media post, could be receiving an email, could be having a conversation, could be seeing somebody on a webinar, but we need to touch people more than once for them to get to know who we are, like what we do, and then trust us enough to purchase from us. So that was the first thing. The second thing was around frequency. It will vary by sector and by business, but as a broad guide, I would say if you're writing a blog once a month, that's a really good place to start. It will come down to how much as a business owner you have the capacity to write. Obviously, if you have a marketing team doing this for you, you may wish to do that more frequently. But if you're still doing it yourself, or perhaps you're working with one or kind of a VA or a marketing support person, that's a really good place to start from an SEO perspective, as well as a kind of a knowledge sharing perspective. And then the email question I get asked quite a lot. And I think as long as people treat your email respectfully, and as you would want your email treated, a monthly newsletter is a really good place to start. I have seen quite successfully some businesses doing a much shorter email weekly. But again, it comes back to what's your business sector? What does your audience want? So as a business owner, what do you have the capacity to deliver? And I would say pick a frequency and stick to it. So you could always do a monthly newsletter. And then if you've got a particular offer or program launching, you might then look at a launch sequence around that. And then you might build that in. So you might kind of ramp it up for a particular time and then go back to your regular frequency. Other organizations I've seen doing a weekly email, and that works for them, depending upon the business, but it's a much shorter email. So it's just like perhaps a more personalized email approach, dropping into people's inboxes once a week. So it depends. There are a couple of variables there, but I would say generally a monthly newsletter is a good place to start.
Does it really need to go out on the same day, Sophie, or can it be that it's random but once a month?
So I would try and pick a frequency. So what you'll also find within that is within email marketing, there'll be certain days that work better, days and times that work better. So for example, if you're a visitor attraction or a hotel, then Wednesday evening might be quite a nice time to drop an email in for availability for the following weekend, because it's that tipping point. If you think about the psychology of your audience, it's the tipping point of first half of the week is done. I'm now starting to plan for the weekend ahead. Brilliant. I know I'm going to go away for the weekend. If you're a service-based businesses, then typically maybe a Tuesday or a Thursday morning might be quite a good time, possibly Friday morning, but it's a bit about testing and refining what works for your business and your, depending upon your sector.
Would you expect to get response from an email newsletter?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
But
So I think mine aren't very successful then because Maybe a couple of times I've had some feedback, but mostly there's no response.
Okay, so I guess it depends on the messaging. The reason why email is really a really good tool is that it ticks away in the background and it reminds people that you're there. So I had an example earlier this year that someone had attended a webinar I had done for the Berkshire Growth Hub beginning of last year. They'd signed up to my newsletter because I'd done a kind of an ebook off the back of that they could download. They'd had my emails over the last sort of maybe 9 to 10 months. Then they reached out and said, we've been on your newsletter, we attended this webinar, we love what you do, we've now got a bit of budget available, we'd like some help. Could can we have a conversation? And so, yeah, so that was the opportunity that was then generated as a result of that. So that's where email really comes into its own. It's that you own the data, unlike social media algorithms, where they decide on who gets what, who sees what. But then also it just keeps you forefront of mind with your with your audience. And on the flip side of that, I rebuilt my website. It launched in January of this year. For I would say beginning for a couple of months last year, I was looking for a website designer. I mean, I meet lots of other marketeers on my travels. There was a lady that I was talking to October, November, when I was pretty much through the end of the project, and I was like, I wish I'd remembered you were there, because actually I would have probably had a conversation with you about how you could have helped me for my website. So actually, because I wasn't on her email list, I'd forgotten about it. So even though you try and sort of kind of bank people or contacts, you forget things naturally. So actually, just to keep front of mind can create opportunities.
Brilliant. That's so helpful. Thank you, Sophie. So, for those of
Welcome.
you that have been really inspired and want to get to know more about Sophie, then check out her links. They will be below, and do get in touch. She's really helpful and knows so much about so much. So, thank you very much for watching. And again, thank you, Sophie, for your words of wisdom.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you for inviting me to talk to you this afternoon.